take risks where you can in putting yourself out there, because when you put yourself out there, opportunities are out there everywhere.
95% people of these companies will just fail. The other 5%, 4% of them will just survive.
We need to be finding out what is wrong with our clients. What are we trying to solve for them?
Either you can survive or you can thrive.
I think one of the biggest problems in Australia is that.
Hey everybody, welcome back to my podcast. Today we have amazing Paige. Paige, I already was telling you how amazing it feels to get connected with somebody like you, because I just moved into Newcastle and I was looking for somebody exactly like you, right? Thank you so much for being on my podcast. For a few people who doesn't know who you are, can you tell us what you do for a living?
Thank you so much for having me. Newcastle is amazing. For anyone who hasn't been to Newcastle, they should definitely get here because we are a sensational city. So I'm Paige. I'm from the Business Vault, and we are a holistic entrepreneur program for anyone who's wanting to start a business. We give them the entire course to teach them how to start a business, from idea to creation to running the whole business through to marketing, finances, personal finances and branding and everything basically in between that you need to be an entrepreneur. I've created the Business Vault. So someone's got a specific platform where they can go to and get every single answer that they need as much as possible. I've tried to be like Google, but that can be impossible sometimes.
Absolutely. So I also saw your background a little bit. You were in marketing, you were in design. Can you just give us an overview of exactly where do you shine? Like if somebody is to follow you on social media, which I will definitely link on this video or a podcast, why should people follow you?
Because I'm just down to earth. I get rid of, I like it to be like the blonde theory. I like everything to be really simple, no jargon, no, because the entrepreneur world and business world is so full of very elaborate, colloquial kind of language, and for new people, it can go over their head. And it can be really hard to understand and actually decide as to where they need to be in business. And that's when I'm just get rid of all of the crap, I say. And it's just like, if you need it translated into normal human English, I'm your girl for that. I like everything to be as simple as possible. And it shouldn't be complicated.
Fantastic. Because we're talking about simplifying things, can you tell me, because I'm sure you talk with a lot of different marketers and founders, where do they suffer in terms of founders, right? Where do they start complicate things? And you just look at it and you are like, you know what? I've seen it over and over again. People start complicating it, even though it's so simple. Where do they struggle the most?
I think they struggle with strategy. I think because we get so used to, like, as business owners and anyone, we're all here to make money. We're all here to pay bills. And our first focus and only focus as business owners is basically, where do we get our first sale? Where do we get our next sale? Where do we get money coming in the door? And I think where we've struggled as entrepreneurs for such a long time is that we've lost the holistic aspect of, we need to be customer focused. We need to be finding out what is wrong with our clients. What are we trying to solve for them? And instead of it being this whole gigantic big thing of, I just need a sale, like, why am I not getting sales? It's like, well, what are you trying to solve? What's the problem? And I think we're losing sight of that as entrepreneurs across the board. And I think, and it comes down to, it's because the rising cost of living is becoming such a big topic in our world, and we do need to make money. But when we focus on the strategy and what people really need, that's when we can start to tap into that, and that's when we eventually make money.
Definitely, that's where people struggle the most. Can I ask you this? So you started the company about 1.5 years ago, is that right? What made you start the company? What did you face? And you were like, you know what? I just have to start this.
Well, because I was a graphic designer, so I'm a graphic designer by trade. I started cover page designs, I think about 6 years ago now. And it was because I was doing a lot of branding, logos for clients, and all of these people who needed logos, they're brand new in business. And they're just like, okay, well, I know I need a logo, but now what do I need to do? And I was like, well, and I owned a tattoo removal studio before I started my graphic design business. So I was already an entrepreneur, and I was like, well, this is the steps that you need to take. And I actually created an ebook for all of my clients. It was a 7-page, it was actually quite wordy. And it was just telling them what to expect when they start a business, what's the next thing they need to do. And from there, the more questions I was getting from each of my clients, I was like, there's nothing out there in the world that actually teaches people how to start a business. There's a lot of courses that teach what to do in marketing or what to do in branding or finances or social media, and nothing just to give them, here's the whole roadmap that you need. Because, and it's like, every industry is really different. I'll agree with that. But the foundations for setting up a business is the same across the board in the whole world. And I've done research across every country in the world to be like, how do you actually start a business, say in the US, in Canada, in the UK? And they're all the same. Yes, they've got kind of different um, official registrations type of thing, but you still need your finances set up correctly. You still need the same kind of branding. You still need marketing. You still need an operational toolkit. Like there's so many facets to it that it's just like, well, if I just get rid of all the stuff, then I can just hone all my years of experience into it and lay it all out. And I've done a lot of research over the years.
Yeah, yeah. Um, you mentioned a few things, right, where people might just go wrong. What are the top two things that you think people definitely need to keep in mind when they do business in Australia? It's like when it comes to the foundation, it's pretty much all the same. Doesn't matter, where you come from. Doesn't matter where the business is, right? The location or even the industry. But what are the few things that you'd say, hey, you know what? Things are different, a little bit different when it comes to this in Australia. So keep that in mind if you start a business in Australia. What do you say to that?
I think one of the biggest problems in Australia is that as new businesses, so like our tax system in Australia is this, I would say, shining pot of gold where the government makes it look like it's this U-Butte tax incentivizing system where it's like, oh, I'm going to start a business. I'm going to spend all of my money when I start the business, and then I'm going to get it all back at tax at the end of financial year. So many founders go through and they spend thousands of dollars on their startup business because they think, oh, it's all right, I'll get the tax back at the end of the financial year, which when they're a sole trader and not registered for GST, that's not the case at all. And people really struggle to see that. Like they go and spend all this money, have that expectation that they're getting that return, and then get to the end of financial year. It's like, oh, why am I not getting a refund? And it's like, well, you're not registered for GST. You're only a sole trader. You're actually getting a lot of tax benefits not being registered for GST. So that's why you're not getting a refund. So that's one of the major things.
Wow.
And I think in terms of Australia too, as entrepreneurs, we do need research. We do need education, whatever field that's in. And because the US and the UK, they're well pronounced with influencers, educators, and they all then charge in US and UK dollars. And now as an Australian entrepreneur, people are having to spend double the amount of what they would just in Australia because they're trying to get that information elsewhere because there's nothing like it in Australia. And that's for a lot of the industries. And I think Australia is really starting to grow with what we have to offer. And it just would be really nice to see that the more Australian founders, they stick with Australian currency as much as possible, or at least give our Australian entrepreneurs the option of whether they want to pay in US dollars or whether they want to pay in Australian dollars.
Yeah, yeah. No, this was definitely eye-opening for me because I was thinking like, hey, how should I go about and do it? Because my company is registered in Canada, and because most of our clients are from Canada and the US, we have about like 40 people working with us. Things are great, but because now I'm here in Australia, we're thinking like, oh, hey, how do we do this? So thank you so much for giving me that advice. And this is exactly what I'm talking about. So I have a theory. The theory is either you can survive or you can thrive, right?
Yes.
Everybody, all of us, we think about, hey, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, I'm going to start this company, and a lot of beautiful things are going to happen, and we will all thrive. But the truth is, we all know 95% people or these companies will just fail. And out of the other 5%, 4% of them will just survive, like barely survive, right? They will just not be able to give up the company for many, many reasons. And one of them is definitely like, hey, I started the company and now I just can't close it, right? So they will just keep having the company years after years. They will just barely survive. I love digging into companies. I love talking to people like you to understand like what can everybody do or what can companies do to thrive, right? In terms of thriving, when it comes to thriving, what can be your advice when it comes to medium-sized companies or small companies? Again, coming back to Australia, right? In Australia, if somebody wants to acquire a lot of clients, right, what can be the strategy? Because that's also one of those things you mentioned at the beginning of this podcast, that's where people also struggle, right? What would you suggest? Like, hey, if you want to thrive. If you want to have a lot of clients for your business, these are the one or two things that you can do. And regardless of any industry you're in, what would be your advice?
So in marketing, I don't have a marketing degree. I'm not a massive marketer, I will say, but from my own experience and from a lot of the other businesses, there's two types of marketing, right? So there you've got your awareness type of marketing, and then you've got your connection type of marketing. And so many people as business owners, they focus on the awareness marketing. They focus on making sure they're posting on social media all of the time. They're getting all of their business in the right channels, but they're actually neglecting that their fruit is in all of their customers that they've already got. So the biggest and best form of marketing out there is word of mouth marketing. I have created like my graphic design business it's award winning. I've never had to market my business because I just looked after my clients, and I've always just relied on word of mouth. And it's like when you serve one, you serve so many others, because people now more so than ever, particularly after the pandemic, people are striving for that connection. And when you're actually nurturing your clients and your customers, and not even the ones that are paying customers, if you've got people who are on your social media and they're commenting, like they're interested in what you have to offer, that's when you can start to nurture them and be like, look, I care about you. What your problem is, I will help you through that. And that's what we've lost sight of. And that's where your money is. If you want to have a really thriving business, focus on the people, because the people is what gives you money. That's at the end of the day. Even if you're a B2B company, you're still doing business with someone at the other end of the computer or the phone. So it's like you've got to relate to people, and you've got to just take down that. I think as business owners, we have a facade to be like, we have to, portray ourselves in a certain way. We can't be kind. We can't be relatable. We've really got to be professional. And I think that's where we just need to be humans.
Yeah. Yeah. No, fantastic. Because you're talking, you just mentioned that how post-pandemic people are definitely craving connection, right? Like meeting somebody in person. By the way, that's exactly why I'm coming to the event that you're co-hosting. So very grateful for that. I'm
Yes,
really
that's
happy like people
exciting.
like you are doing it.
So
Absolutely grateful
excited.
for that. Can you tell us, again, coming back to the actual conversation about marketing and growing the business. And obviously, as you mentioned, one of the fundamental ones is like now people are coming back to one-to-one connections and relationships. How can somebody not come across as fake, right? How can somebody make a lot of connections and they're genuine connections so that they can build the connection, nurture the connection, and then convert those connections into pay customers? What can be your suggestion for people who really wants to make those connections?
I think at the end of the day, it comes down to confidence. And it comes down to confidence of what you're selling, why you're selling it. And we all lose sight. Simon Sinek is really big on your why. And as business owners, we get caught up in all of the operations and all of the running around and doing things that we just forget why we actually started the business in the first place. And if you can have your why written on a wall or somewhere on your desktop or on your on your wallpaper on your phone, I think when you start to remember what actually made you start the business, like what was that pain point, or, and we're really starting now, there's a really big shift in marketing, is that not approaching to pain point marketing, is really starting to approach passion point marketing. So speak to people about what they want in their life rather than what they don't have or what they're missing out on. And I think it's really important for business owners to just find where they're comfortable, if they're extroverted, where is your strength in your extrovertism? Or if you're an introvert, where do you prefer to communicate? Do you prefer to communicate in messages? Do you prefer to communicate in emails? Like, you do need to find a way to stick with your comforts, but then nothing good also happens inside of your comfort zone. So you really need to stretch yourself as much as possible and take risks where you can in putting yourself out there. Because when you put yourself out there, opportunities are out there everywhere. And every single decision that you make is one opportunity away from changing your life completely or changing the life of your business as well. So stepping outside and essentially finding who you are as a person between your friends and family. And you've got to find that balance as to who you want to be to your customers. Like some of my businesses, I've had to be really professional and quite slant. And, my business now is like, actually, I didn't want to be professional. I was a real estate agent for a long time and I had the dream of being Australia's #1 female real estate agent. But I didn't have the ego for it. I couldn't look at people and tell them something when I knew something different. And I just didn't have that. So I was like, well, where can I find where I'm most relatable? And that's where I was like, well, I just can't work for anyone. It's so simple.
Wow. So you were a real estate agent and then you became a graphic designer. Am I saying this right? And then became an entrepreneur. How did you make those shifts? Can I ask you this in this way? What gave you that courage? I feel like a lot of us, we just don't have the courage to change the entire career path. We think about, oh my God, I've been in this career for the last 3 years. So all this hard work that I've done, all the things that I've built, like all the reputation that I've built, like it's just not going to matter anymore. Like, what do I do? What gave you the courage?
I think I start every day. Like I've had a lot of things that have happened in my life that really could have been the end of my story. And so I wake up every day and I look at it as a new day. Like I think that every day there's a new beginning somewhere and you don't have to be stuck. And it's all about being really consciously aware as to what sets your soul on fire. And if it doesn't set your soul on fire, you have the power to change it. And I think we all get so caught up in doing the social norms and doing what is deemed to be safe in society, which is having a job and running a normal career, but then being really miserable and depressed on the side. Like I could never work for employers. I faced a lot of rigmarole in my employment life. I did not like it at all. And I was like, well, so every time I got to a new business, like, yes, I'm one of those people that if I find a problem, I want to solve it no matter what intuitive, inventive things I need to create to get there. But everything's a stepping stone to get you to where you are essentially destined to be anyway. Like you don't have to have it all figured out. And I think that's where we get so stuck is that we've got to have we've got to have it planned out for us. And if we don't have our desired career by 25, then who are we and what are we doing with our life? But there's like a lot of my clients, they're actually middle-aged women and they're finding their feet for the first time in their life and they've found more power to themselves than ever before. And some people can get really depressed about it, that they're only deciding their life now, or they're really taking it in their stride and they're like, I've got so much time to build whatever I want. So I think that's where you
Wow.
really need to find that confidence.
Where did you find your confidence? What did you go to some workshop? Did you watch YouTube videos? I remember you was talking about you have like 75 books here and there. Where did you find your confidence?
Well, I did modeling for a lot of years. And I think with modeling, I was modeling from 12 years old. So I was constantly told that either I'm really good or really bad. It was the best of both worlds, I guess. And I think, I faced a lot, like I've gone through a domestic violent relationship and lots of like probably really intricate things that I'm just like, well, if I'm not going to be happy about it, then why am I going to live? Like, what's the point? I'm here to live on earth, to be happy and to be joyous and find beauty in all of these things around me. Then I need to have that confidence to step outside. And I know that I need to be confident to help other people be confident. Because if I can shine my light, then that gives other people permission to do the same. And I think we are very much all trying to find that someone who can just help us be more confident. And I've always looked up to like a lot of influencers and I see what they're doing. Like I look at Mel Robbins, Brene Brown, our local girl, Denise Duffield Thomas, she's phenomenal. And I look at these people and I'm in awe of them and always learning. And I think you can either be jealous or you know, in admiration of people. And you've got to always just have that hunger to strive, I think, and just find peace in your life.
Wow. Y- Yeah, I can totally relate because the hunger that you just talked about, you have to have it. I have seen it over and over again. Like whenever I felt like, hey, why am I kept asking. So I love working. Like I can work 7 days a week. I wake up in the morning, I think about like, hey, so these are the things that I have to do. But there are times when after a few years or so, I think of, I see my day and I'm like, hey, I wasn't productive today. And then probably, it happened for a few days and I'm like, what happened? And then I realized, hey, for whatever reason, something happened. Maybe I've achieved what I wanted or something else happened, but I don't have the hunger anymore. So you're absolutely right. You have to have the hunger. You have to have that, there are some things that you can have, and that brings other good traits as well. So if you have the hunger, that means you're trying. That means you're working hard. When you're working hard, you're very confident about yourself. So it keeps definitely, growing just like that. No, thank you so much. This was good, very good advice. And I have a lot of people watching this show and sometimes they message me. They're like, "Hey, I don't even know where to start." Right? And you're absolutely right. Everything starts from just you. Even the business before we talk about or we think about sometimes like, "Hey, I have to fix this in the business. I have to fix that in the business." But oftentimes, what I have also said is that no, no, no. It's not the business that is anything going wrong. It's me. I have to fix myself first. If I can fix myself, and then probably I can fix the business. So yeah, I can totally relate with that. Um, can I ask you this? Why did you decide to launch these courses? These are amazing courses, right? I went to your website. I love how you have pretty much everything. Like you have covered every single thing. I saw you have covered the sales part, the marketing part, the design part, and I also saw you covered the personal finance part, right? Can I ask this? What made you decide to go with the courses, right? Where you're selling the courses and not probably giving one-to-one consultation, if I'm not saying it right?
Yeah, so yeah, I definitely do one-on-one
Okay,
consultations and
fantastic.
mentoring. So I shadow work with a lot of my clients, like 3 months at a time. If they want to do that, I did the cohort evergreen course because they are a bit time poor, particularly if they are starting a business and they're generally either working one or two jobs, they've got a family, and they just want to learn it in their own time. So their workbook is incredibly comprehensive, and it's got video tutorials in there as well, and it's all laid out with workbooks because I'm a big pen to paper kind of girl. So I know that when you start putting pen to paper, things actually start to come to life. So that's why I created such a cohort course, because I was like, well, when people can start to write these things down, it actually sparks ideas. And we dive into finding out who their ideal client is, who their target audience is. And yeah, we dive into personal money because I think this is one of the struggles as entrepreneurs is getting from small to medium to large corporations, is that setting the expectations to be like, when you're starting a business, you're a solopreneur. You've got to do everything by yourself. You don't have the money or the capital to outsource. Generally, like there's a lot of people who are bootstrapping their own way into starting a business, and they're juggling on, particularly for women at the moment. We're really struggling with managing kids and school drop offs and doing all the household chores and finding out where they can fit in. So this course was designed because it's like, well, business is personal at the end of the day. There's that saying around the world, it's like it's not personal, it's just business. When we've all got a life that we're trying to live at the same time. We're trying to do life and then work at the same time and make money. And we've got all of these hats to wear. So that's where the courses just cover everything, because I feel like people do need to learn about branding. They need to know what their color scheme is in conveying. Like I've got a whole page in there of every color under the rainbow and what that messaging conveys to people, because it's not just what you personally like. It's like it's what your ideal client and audience needs to see, what they need to feel, and what they want to encompass at the end of the day. And it's not just a personal preference type of thing. And so that's where, I created the self-paced course, or yes, we can do it one-on-one as well. So there's so many different ways to learn, and on the podcast as well. So the podcast is getting there, which is exciting.
That's fantastic. I love it. I love it. I have to ask you this last question. What are the top 3 books that you can recommend? Because as you mentioned there, you have a lot of books. What are the top 3 books you can recommend for anybody to read? Like you just have to read them.
Oh, gosh, that's going to be a really hard one. I love the Monk Who Sold His Ferrari by Raman Sharma. He's amazing. Um, The Wilderness, I think, by Brene Brown.
Okay.
I believe that's what it's called. I'll double check it. Um, and the third one would be the high performing, the Mindful High Performer by Chelsea Potterfield. I'm in the middle of reading that book, and I do absolutely love it. So it is so, so good.
Oh, fantastic. I'll definitely order all of them. Absolutely. I've heard about the monk who sold his Ferrari. I listened to the short form, but I definitely have to download it, the full form to listen to it. But thank you so much for recommending this book. Before we go, Paige, anything that you want to say to the audience that might help them, or how can they find you?
I think just you've got to have belief in yourself, and you've got to just have belief that no matter how small you may feel internally, like you've got the capacity to really play big and play a big part in your world. And no matter what your financial struggle has been throughout your whole life or your financial story, you actually have the power to change the future for your generations and the generations around you. So when you start to tap into that, that really, really helps. But yeah, you can find me at thebusinessvault.au, at thebusinessvault.com.au, and thebusinessvault.au across all social media platforms, and also the Business Vault on Spotify and Apple Podcasts and all of the podcast places. So that's a new and exciting podcast, and we've got our membership also launching in the next month. So the Holistic Entrepreneur, which focuses on managing life and being an entrepreneur at the same time.
Oh, this is fantastic, Paige. I will definitely be listening to your podcast and following you on all the social medias that we can. For everybody who is listening to this podcast on any of our podcast platform, do follow us. If you're watching this on YouTube, hit that like button and definitely subscribe. Paige, thank you so much for being on this podcast, and I'll definitely see you at the event. Thanks. Have a good one.
Thank you so much. I'll talk to you soon.
Thanks.